Your heart stops, but your voice doesn't. Do you know what happens to your prayers after you die? Not the requiem masses said by your grieving family or the candles lit by your friends, but the prayers you prayed while your lungs still drew breath, the petitions you lifted in the middle of the night, the rosaries whispered in the car, the intercessions offered for people whose names you've long forgotten. Where do they go? Do they dissolve into the atmosphere when your heart stops beating? Are they lost in the cold void between time and eternity? Saint Padre Pio of Pietrelcina, the mystic who bore the wounds of Christ in his own flesh for 50 years, saw the answer. He was granted a terrible grace, the ability to see beyond the veil and witness the invisible architecture of prayer. What he saw was so piercing that it shattered the way he understood the mercy of God and the responsibility of every living soul. He realized that our prayers do not die with us, they go ahead of us, waiting like stored treasure or seeds planted in the soil of eternity. A vision of the threaded soul. Padre Pio lived with one foot in the visible world and the other in the supernatural. He read souls as easily as you read a newspaper, discerning hidden guilts and secret graces. To him, the spiritual realm was not a theory, it was more tangible than stone. In one profound vision, Padre Pio watched a soul depart from its body. The man stood trembling before the throne of judgment. He was not a wicked man, but he was not ready for the beatific vision. He was stained with the dust of the world, venial sins, attachments to comfort, and the subtle pride that clings to the human heart. The light of God's presence was an unbearable fire, revealing every compromise and every moment of indifference. The soul was sent to Purgatory to begin its purification, but as the cleansing fires rose, Padre Pio saw something extraordinary, threads of light descending from above. These threads pierced through the flames and wrapped themselves around the suffering soul like ropes of mercy. These were the man's own prayers. Each thread represented an act of charity he had performed while alive. One thread was a rosary he had prayed for a sick coworker who never knew he was being remembered. Another was a mass he had offered for a name he saw in a parish bulletin. Another was a simple "Our Father" muttered for the souls in purgatory out of habit. While the man lived, he thought these prayers were fleeting, but in eternity they became his lifeline. Each thread lessened the heat, each prayer shortened the time. He had built a ladder out of intercession, and now he was climbing it back toward God. The tragedy of the spiritual consumer. However, the vision turned dark. Padre Pio saw other souls in the purifying fire who had almost no threads descending toward them. These were people who lived decent lives. They went to Mass, they avoided scandal, they checked the boxes of religious obligation, but they lived entirely for themselves. Their prayers were always for their health, their money, their success. They were spiritual consumers who took grace but never gave it away. They never wept for the lost. They never offered a sacrifice for a stranger. They never interceded for the suffering. Now, in purgatory, they burned in a crushing loneliness. No threads came, no relief descended. The fires raged without mercy because mercy had never flowed through them while they lived. This is the terrible mathematics of the kingdom. The measure you use for others is the measure used for you. It is not that God is cruel, but that these souls had never built a capacity for self-giving love. They had no ladder because they never provided a rung for anyone else. The communion of saints, a living network. Padre Pio witnessed the flip side of this mystery, the power of the living to reach into the flames. He saw a woman who had died suddenly in an accident, totally unprepared. She stood at the edge of purgatory, terrified. Suddenly, a flood of light so bright it nearly obscured her poured down from heaven. This was not her own merit, but a river of grace generated by the prayers of those still on earth. Her mother kneeling in a pew, her husband weeping over a rosary, strangers who heard of the accident and whispered a prayer for her soul. This is the reality of the communion of saints. It is not a metaphor, it is a living network of grace. When you pray for the dead, you are not wasting your breath. You are reaching through the veil and pulling a soul toward the light. Padre Pio once remarked that more souls of the dead than of the living climbed the mountain to attend his masses. They came as beggars, yearning for one thread of light to ease their transition into glory. The treasury of heaven. A hard truth revealed in these visions is that no prayer is ever lost. If you pray for someone who is already in heaven, or for someone who refuses the grace, God does not discard that prayer. He redirects it. He applies it to a forgotten soul who has no one else to pray for them, someone who has been waiting in the flames for decades, perhaps centuries, for just one Hail Mary to cool their brow. Padre Pio made it his mission to be the advocate for the abandoned dead. He understood that our prayers are the only currency we can take with us. You cannot take your bank account, your reputation, or your beauty past the grave. You only take the love you gave away. Building your ladder today. Every moment of your earthly life is an opportunity to build the ladder you will one day have to climb. Every intercession for an enemy is a rung. Every mass offered for the deceased is a rung. Every sacrifice made for a sinner is a rung. If you pray constantly for others, you will find that heaven has been preparing a welcome for you. You will find that the souls you have helped are waiting at the gates, and the prayers you whispered in secret have built a mansion of mercy around your name. But if you wait until your heart stops to think of others, you may find only silence. Even Padre Pio on his deathbed asked his brothers to pray for him. He who bore the stigmata and saw the face of Christ still begged for mercy. Why? Because he knew that love received is the only door to heaven, and love given is the only key. The question remains, what will your prayers look like when they meet you in eternity? Will they be a web of light or a haunting silence? If this message moved you to deepen your prayer life, help us share the wisdom of the saints with the world. Subscribe now to join our community of intercessors and never miss a journey into the heart of the faith.